What defines a killer interview process?
This is a really important one because I think there's a few different things. Firstly, one-stage interviews don't work unless you do it correctly. And that's weird coming from a recruiter because recruiters tend to want you to have the shortest interview process possible. The issue is with one-stage interview processes, you don't find out enough about the candidate and you don't get to really make an informed decision on the candidate, and you might feel like you're rushing yourself, but also the candidate will feel rushed and won't feel like they've got the confidence that they're accepting this role because they've just spoken to you for an hour, haven't managed to meet the team, nothing like that. So you might feel like you're being efficient, but what you really are doing is putting people off, I think, unless you do it really, really, really well.
Yeah, and I think there's an element of like the subconscious there, like, but on both parts going away to process, because you can often, as either a candidate or an employer, heat of the moment, there might be things that you want to ask about, the role, or the employer might want to ask of the candidate or their experience or how they might help solve certain challenges that you're not going to necessarily think of on your feet. And actually getting that time to digest, ready for a second stage, is probably really beneficial.
Absolutely. And I think if you're doing a one-stage interview, you need to be really careful not to make it just a fire load of questions at the person. Allow them time to follow up again with questions if they don't have anything on the first one. Give them an opportunity to meet the team and come into your office as well if you're an in-office business, and allow them to have another follow-up call if that's required. Allow them that flexibility, really.
Yep.
And then also explain why you do do one-stage interviews. Maybe it's because you realise how valuable people's time is if they're in a full-time job, and how the market moves quickly, etc. So really frame it. There's a really good book by Laszlo Bock called Work Rules. He was a HR director, I think, at Google, and they did a study on the effectiveness of certain parts of an interview process. A sample of work will say 29% of their performance in a job, in a future job. A structured interview, and that's being careful with those words because a lot of people don't have structured interviews or standardized interviews, will tell you 27%. Like an assessment, like a conscientiousness-based assessment, will tell you 10%. References will tell you about 7%. And then work history will only tell you about 3%. I believe that a really good process needs to involve certain parts of all of those things. So for me, I think if you're hiring tech people, I think it should be a two-stage process with a test in the middle, depending on the role, obviously. That first stage should be a bit of a numpty test to make sure they're not a numpty and that they can talk to people. That's just go through CV, say hello, tell them about the job, that sort of thing. Next step, send them a test to go and do. But really importantly, I think what a lot of people don't do is book the final stage in once you send that person the test, because it stops them from going away and not giving them a deadline. And it also keeps your time free to interview them once they've gone to do the test, because there's nothing worse than someone doing a test, you review it, but you can't interview them for another week and then they're off the market. Massive, massive waste of time. And then final interview, go through the test, bit of pair programming or some sort of like where you work together on a problem and create a solution, get them to meet the team, and then obviously like Q&A, that sort of thing. And then take references. Super, super important, take references and ask the person they used to work for what it's like losing them, and if the person that you're speaking to isn't super like excited about them and really, really happy to talk about them and is really complimentary of them, then question, are they an A player? Yeah. Because for me, people that I worked for previously, someone ran me for a reference for them, I'd be like, this person's amazing. You need to hire this person if they're a really good employee.